Hey guys, in light of my 21st birthday, which is tomorrow, the 13th, I decided to post a video. Oh, what do you know? PM decided to post a video. Oh, that's fantastic. It's one video a year. It's great. I look forward to it every single year. But not a stupid, dumb, funny video that I usually do for my birthday, but a different one, I guess. I've had a pretty emotional past few weeks, and today I made a speech about overcoming fears that was actually really personal, and it meant a lot to me. So in honor of my 21st birthday, I kind of just wanted to share that with you guys, the lovely people who watch my videos on the internet. But that doesn't mean that I haven't been working on things. There are a few things that I'm working on right now, and as things sort of settle down around here on my end, I'll put those things out the door for you guys to look at with your pretty little faces and eyes. But yeah, without further delay, here's the speech that I delivered in my public speaking class today. I hope you guys can learn a little bit something about me and, you know, maybe even take something a little more away from it as well. Alright guys, thanks, and I'll see you guys next time. Woo, 21! Hooray, I'm 21, etc. etc. Happy birthday. Greetings, salutations, good afternoon, and other like statements, Mr. Jablonski's public speaking class, CMSD 220, Section 3, CT B233. I'm hoping I got that all right. Anyway, it's the last week of the quarter, and finals are next week. And let's be honest, we've all come a pretty long way. It sounds kind of corny and cliche when I say it that way, but I really do mean it. Now, I've only been in class for a little under 3 months, but I feel like there's a certain bond that forms with people who are thrown into classes like this. I don't think anyone was completely comfortable coming into this class, and for a lot of us, at least for me, I felt like I was throwing my naked self out into the wild to be ripped to shreds by cougars, or something, when I registered for this class. And that fear started long before winter quarter even began, let me assure you. I was super anxious and nervous about taking a public speaking class, but as fall carried on, I mentally prepared for this class. Thinking of the first day as my upcoming cruise date on a ship I was certain would sink straight into the Pacific. But the night before the first day of winter quarter, I realized that this class was at the tech center and not the main campus. So there was a little freak out there too, but it was okay. Then, on the first day of class, Mr. Jablonski was such a nice guy that he assigned a speech due the very next class. What a nice guy. Needless to say, I was only slightly terrified. I only had to pop like 15 Xanax to function until then. But, I mean, I really dreaded this class. This quarter, this class has been my main point of stress, and I'm not afraid to admit that at all. I lost countless hours of sleep, would freak out about speeches weeks in advance, and dread every day, fearful that we'd have a surprise delivery exercise. But this isn't because I didn't like our instructor or the people in our class, well, except Max and Sheldon, but because I was just terrified of public speaking. I mean, not just the prospect of public speaking, but everything that comes along with it. The insecurities, the disclosure, the risk. So yeah, listen. But the judgment and everything else, and all of these fears and insecurities have just been fears and anxieties that have been with me for an extraordinarily long time. But despite that, I still took this class. Now, I think the single most inspiring and motivating words that anyone can share is a story. Stories of overcoming, stories of growth. And I, PM Casey, turn 21 tomorrow, so I believe it's more than fitting to share a story with all of you, our little public speaking family, if you will, an extremely personal story of my own growth. Something that I've never really directly explained to anyone because I've been too nervous, too anxious, and too afraid, but often I've learned that is what inhibits the process of progression, the process of growth, your motivation, and perseverance to confront fears head on. From a young age, though at the time I can never really put my finger on it, there's always been a part of me that has disagreed with itself. The part of me that has always believed that there's been something wrong with me. When I was young, the single word that I associated with myself was shy. That's what I knew myself as, the shy kid. The little boy whose heart would race when he would be told he needed to order his own ice cream at Baskin Robbins. Don't be shy, Patrick Michael, I would be told over and over again. I was told by my parents and others that it would just go away, dissipate in time. All I had to do was just not be shy. It was simple to everyone else, a phase that you were expected to cross, conquer, and just get over. But for me, that never happened. Thinking back, the central feeling that I recall while I was little, actually for the majority of my life, was feeling shy, as everyone else called it. But I now know that this shyness is actually anxiety. And being diagnosed with a general anxiety disorder, or I know that now, being diagnosed with a general anxiety disorder a few years ago. But regardless, when I was little, I always felt this way. Always told it was wrong and I was feeling horrible because of it. And no, it didn't go away like everyone else said. It got worse. A lot worse. I just kept feeling worse and worse for feeling anxious because I was expected to just get over it and wasn't able to. And it just kept getting worse. And it evolved to the point where I would actually personally question all of my own emotions, always wondering if they were right. Now, it would be odd for me not to mention anything about technology in a speech. So here goes. Video games. Video games have always been a part of my life, as odd as that statement may sound to you guys. But sitting down with a controller in my hands or keyboard or mouse at my fingertips has always been one of the only ways I've known to put those cumbersome feelings of anxiety to rest. But as I grew up with these electronic worlds, they grew up with me. My hobby and favorite pastime evolved into one of my central passions and joys. But from elementary school and on, this central passion and joy of mine would alienate me to no end. It started with just the notion from parents and teachers that sitting in front of a television was bad, which I understood, even at that young of an age, but it's not like I didn't like going outside or anything, because I did. But once stories like violence in video games was ruining our children started making news headlines, I could feel the cracks beginning to surface. I could feel the tension between my parents and I building, and I started feeling bad for what I liked. In 6th grade, I started attending the Vancouver School of Arts and Academics, the VSAA, where I would spend the next 7 years of my life until I graduated. But it was sort of a blessing and a curse in ways. I grew my ability to create film, paint and draw, and most of all, think abstractly and critically through this art of learning. Art, a concept that we were taught, was fairly open-ended, free-form, and all-inclusive. Something created with purpose, with creative intent, that is art. A definition so all-encompassing, so free-form, so limitless, it made you feel infinite when you sat down and put brush on canvas. But then, the art that I so personally cherish was met with opposition. The artfully crafted illustrations, the magnificent worlds I grew up with, and the carefully and meticulously coded experiences I cherished, somehow my peers and instructors believed they didn't fit into that all-encompassing statement of creation that was art. Now, ordinarily, someone who has their head on straight, someone who wasn't me at that time, would just shrug it off. Oh, you don't think video games are art? No, that's cool. You just probably aren't too familiar with them. But at the time, with my skewed perception, along with my introverted personality and a sea of extroverts, and few to share my joy of gaming with, these sentiments hit me extremely personally. All these words together, being constantly told from a young age that my feelings of anxiety were wrong, and now being told that my interests were wrong, that my single refuge for my anxiousness was wrong, it completely shattered me. It just made me feel like I was wrong. I started to disengage. I would go to school and on the ride home not remember a single thing. My mind was locked and all I could envision was my finger hitting that power button when I walked in my front door, booting up my Xbox and feeling that relief. Being able to remove that psychological mask and think and feel the way that I really do without any inhibition. And that went on for about 4 years. 4 years of solitude, depression, and feeling bad for myself. But even though I acted out of fear, out of a want to avoid all of it, simply detach myself, Out of that state, out of laying at the depths of the ocean floor, something came of it. After 4 years, things eventually began to come together as I grounded myself. But it was during this point, that 4 years, that I really dove into the world of competitive gaming. It was Halo 3. It was here that I met some incredible people online, most that I still, years later, regard as some of my best friends. And when I would emerge victorious from a heated match, I would feel a euphoric sense of personal accomplishment, something that was so rare for me. And it is here where I really started to better grasp just who I was and what that meant to me. I started taking the game more seriously, working my way up the ladder of ranks and playing increasingly more skillful and challenging opponents, even some professional players. But regardless of how good I was or any of that, I felt free from all of those condescending eyes I was so accustomed to. It was time that was just me, where I could finally sit down and be honest with myself about everything. It's here, the place where I felt the most free from all the external bondage of my world, that I started to notice a shift. When I would lose a nail-biting match online, I wasn't cut down and destroyed, as I so often would be at school or anywhere else. I was driven to improve, driven to make better, and never hesitant to progress. Every setback that I experienced in-game deepened my resolve. Through this game, I was able to rekindle my sense of self-worth and build it back up. But after a while, I became so trivialized by this. Why is it that I can push through these fears in-game and not push through the fears in all other aspects of my existence? Why is it that I'm able to summon this determination and resolve when the pressure is at its pinnacle, when my team needs me the most, and when the fate of the game rests on my shoulders, and not when I'm confronted by external pressures and judgments of others everywhere else? It's because as I grew up, I just listened to everyone. I was told that I was told what I was supposed to be feeling. Assimilated the beliefs of others around me, and was informed of what type of person I was. I was ignorant to my feelings and emotions, my own personal morale and genuine self, because that's what I grew up with. It was just as my parents and so many others told me as a little boy. Don't worry, you'll get over it. But that was never the case. Looking back, I sat idle for so long because I thought everything at some point would just change. And I realized it's not like I was always some gifted child prodigy when I first slipped that Halo 2 disc into my Xbox when I was 13. I remember when I first started playing Halo, maybe not the exactly the same, but that intimidation was there, that fear, that anxiety, and I broke through it. Through practice, through hard work, through dedication, I grew and got better because I wanted it so badly. It just clicked one day. You don't sit around and wait for some miracle to come and sweep you off your feet, for some girl or someone to fix all of your problems. You stand up, challenge your fears, and simply become whatever the hell you want to be. Because I've always been able to. Because you've always been able to. Because everyone has this capacity to overcome that which they fear and grow beyond it. As years rolled on and on, I embraced this thought and began transitioning my frame of mind in-game into the rest of my life. I began applying that same perseverance, that same competitive mindset, and that same capacity for creative problem solving to all other areas of my life. I began entering each nook and crevice with the mindset that everything is connected. Everything is connected. All of what you learn and what you experience, many things that appear to be very disconnected and separate, like playing video games, but everything is universal. You just need to figure out how it applies to everything else. You start small, or rather you look to everything you've done before, and you start transitioning your frame of mind to other things. Perfecting a 4-shot with your VR and coordinating a well-timed push in the pit in Halo 3 technically has nothing to do with public speaking. But once you internalize and acknowledge that you attained that goal, that you accomplished something that was intimidating, something that you feared, you start breaking down psychological barriers that you've thrown up. You realize that in all things you are afraid of, all things that are intimidating, you start at the very same place every time. At the very bottom and work your way up. And if you've done it before, you can do it again and again. And there is a point in your life that you've done it before. We've all accomplished something. The prospect of animating enthralled me, but I was intimidated by the workload, so I animated as a main component of my senior project in high school. I was afraid of being in front of a camera and speaking my mind, so I started a YouTube channel. I was embarrassed by my interest in video games, so I wrote a college-level paper on video games as art and made a presentation on it. I was terrified and paralyzed by public speaking more than you can even imagine. So I took a public speaking class. I was insecure, afraid, and mortified by all these things, but I weathered the tremors that were sent through my spine and pushed through them, because I knew I could do it again, and I knew I would grow because of it. Tomorrow, I turn 21. At 13, you're a teenager. 16, you get your license. 18, you're legal. And 21, you're no longer a minor. But despite all of that, a close friend of mine once said to me, the day you grow up is the day you become the person you want to be. So even though at midnight tonight, I crossed that last barrier of age, that last hurdle into complete adulthood, right now as I stand here today, I accept what I am today. But there's still more I desire, still more that I want to become, still fears that linger inside me that I acknowledge and want to dismantle. But that's okay, because growing up is hard. And because sometimes all that matters isn't what you aspire to be, but your indignation to grow and become. You all have made this an astounding class, and I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to speak to all of you. Thank you.